Hey guys, SoCal Val here. You are listening to the Hitting the Turnbuckle podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Hitting the Turnbuckle podcast with myself, the problem child, Dave Robinson, and my good friend and AEW fanatic, Parker Hamlet. Parker, how you doing, my friend?
Man, it's been a couple moons since we've had the problem child and as you say, the fanatic myself when it comes to the good old all elite wrestling. But Papa Punk made his exodus some time ago, and it's been kind of a new era, a rated R era, if you
Yeah,
will, in
it's been,
AEW. And I feel like so much has changed since the
yeah,
last time we've sat here and really had a chance to even discuss AEW. So I'm definitely eager to get into it. And just before we went on recording here, congratulated you. You have newest addition to your family, and a lot of good things on the horizon, personally and in the professional wrestling business. So just happy on this Sunday that we can sit here and talk about it, because there is a lot to talk about. Like I said, it feels like it's a new chapter, if you will, just in a lot of regards. So I'm kind of excited
definitely.
to talk about a lot of it today.
Well, thank you, man, for the kind words. And also, yeah, I think the last time we were on a podcast together was when the Punk news broke. And we kind of had differing views in some respects. It'd probably be a good time to kind of catch up on that. What are your thoughts on AEW without CM Punk? What do you think of Edge's arrival or Adam Copeland's arrival? Where do you think AEW is at right now in 2023? Obviously, we've had some big shows this year, all in, and announcements of more pay-per-views, and there's definitely been a lot of growth for the company. Where do you think they're at the minute, Parker?
Well, it's interesting because you're on the other side of the pond. I'm here stateside, and a lot of the narratives you see is, you know, WWE obviously is in a big boom right now, business wise, and
Yeah.
with that flux of positive media traction and growth for their company, people are going to kind of point fingers at some of the things that are on the downward spiral for All Elite Wrestling. But I personally, Dave, don't think all things are doom and gloom. I know I said them losing Punk wasn't going to be a good thing. I still agree that it wasn't a good thing overall, but the identity that they've been able to form ever since Punk's exodus, in my opinion, has been one that has been true to the kind of mission statement of AEW in the first place. You've seen kind of Bryan Danielson become, the focal point of AEW Collision, not only creatively, but on the screen as well. Got into a phenomenal contest last night with, Andrade El Idolo, and, setting up a future feud post match. Definitely excited to talk about that. You see some of the wheels kind of turning, them kind of, investing themselves in some of these future guys like Ricky Starks, who, alongside Big Bill, who you and I have always had high praise for, has come along and, he trademarked his own name this week, interestingly enough. So that WWE conversation is going to be an interesting one down the line alongside the bidding war. But but also you see the resurgence of guys like Swerve Strickland, who are, finally getting the exposure that I feel like they ever so deserve. And, to me, and not only that, I say resurgence, but I feel like the definition of a career resurgence is what we've witnessed with Christian Cage, who is really finding his footing, and then simultaneously they get debatably their biggest free agent signing to date in one Adam Copeland, who, if the WWE Hall of Fame was making up a class tomorrow, and let's say he didn't defect to All Elite Wrestling and he did call it quits, this guy would have a yellow jacket. He'd be a Hall of Famer. So I mean, as a Punk fan, I've gone through most stages of grief at this point. And with that being said, I don't think things are all doom and gloom. You have a lot of people talking about attendance, which I think is kind of an unfair conversation. We are in the midst of football season, about to start basketball season. We're talking about stuff on Saturday night. It's tricky conversation, and context matters. But it's funny, Dave. I've been meaning to ask you, how do you feel about the current state of All Elite Wrestling as of right now?
So they're definitely going through a transitional period, I would say. And Tony Khan alluded to that by announcing a new era. Um, I think what AEW have always had and always will have is great characters and great matches. So it's just kind of putting everything together to create a cohesive television program that people are kind of desperate to check in, week out. And at the end of one episode, they want to go straight to the next one. And at times we've seen that. I kind of feel like we're in a building stage at the minute. And I'm really positive about the future. I'm really positive about some of the things you talked about, Ricky Starks, Swerve Strickland, Andrade. We've got Roosh coming back as well. So there's definitely a lot to be excited about. So I've tried to distance myself from the negativity, to be honest. As you alluded to earlier, I've had a busy couple of months myself. And I probably haven't been diving into the dirt sheets as much as I used to, because everything that I was seeing was quite negative, whether that was viewership, whether that was attendance, whether that was I don't think the quality of the wrestling matches has ever been in question, but the qualities of the show in general has been, as you say, that there's fingers been pointed. WWE fans seem to kind of love to kind of point out any shortcomings on AEW's behalf. But I still think it's a really good time for wrestling in general and a really good time for AEW. And I thought we had a great episode of Collision last night.
No, I couldn't agree more. And, I don't really think a lot of the negativity you see online is really contingent with what's actually going on, on your screen or behind the scenes or even just at these shows in general. I mean, some of the dirt sheets and some of these, pages on Twitter and social media or X, excuse me, say stuff along the lines of like, oh, look at this empty show. Edge deserves better than this. At least he, went out to a sold out crowd in Toronto. And, Adam Copeland made it blatantly clear why he came to AEW. He's quite frankly doing it for the love of the game. He's doing it because it's a passion project for him. And, Mark Henry said it best, in my opinion. It was never really a competition between AEW and WWE, if we're being honest with ourselves here. And, I like that AEW is kind of lean more into the identity of the fact that they are very much an alternative. And, with any promotion, when you're building your promotion up, you look into star power. And when you lose a guy with the star power of CM Punk, and if you don't think CM Punk has star power, this guy was calling the intro video for the Blackhawks last night. I mean, this is a guy that, is very much a celebrity and very much a prominent figure, not only in the wrestling community, but in pop culture as well. So, I mean, that guy has his stamp, has his legacy. And, his legacy may, some say be tarnished in All Elite Wrestling. So to replace a guy like that is a tall task. But Adam Copeland so far has done that, and he's done it very well. And, a lot of people are going to sit in and immediately make comparisons to WWE. I remember when everybody was so everybody was so analytical about how Jay White debuted and, how unimpactful his debut was. Yep. And now he's wrestling for the World Heavyweight Championship at a Big Four pay-per-view and is part of one of the biggest factions and had the biggest quarterly demo. I think they were clocking in close to 1 million viewers when he was wrestling Penta to open Dynamite the other night. And, like Mark Henry said himself too, it's not quite about ratings there, problem child. It's about the demo, and it's about the numbers that you're drawing in, and are people staying on the channel? Are you the reason the people are turning the channel? Or are you the reason they're staying on it? And it seems like Bryan Danielson and the creative team over at AEW are very much aware of who they need to be investing in. I mean, I was smiling from ear to ear when Swerve Strickland picked up that wing over Hangman at Wrestle Dream. I thought Wrestle Dream really was the beginning of a new era. I mean, the pay-per-view just felt different. And that was just a huge moment at the very end. And, come Full Gear, they're going to be at the Forum. And I don't really think it's speculation at this point as much as it's just almost a fact that we're going to be seeing Mercedes Moné in an AEW ring a lot sooner rather than later. And you talk about a huge signing for the women and just for the company in general. I mean, if you're able to get in two people the pedigree of Adam Copeland and Mercedes Moné in your promotion, I mean, you're trending in the right direction. So I don't really think it needs to be a AEW versus WWE conversation. I think with any walk of life, you don't need to be comparing yourself to other people. I mean, competition is good. It brings out the best in a lot of people, but realistically, you need to compare yourself to where you were yesterday rather than to who's across or beside you. I just think that comparison is the thief of joy. And I feel like AEW is eons ahead of what most promotions would and could accomplish, just in its inception only 4 years ago. So, like you said, it's transition period, rebuild period. There's definitely something different in the air, and it's been a little bit of an acclimation. I'm a lot like you. I try to avoid all the stuff, but it just kind of comes to you. But this is definitely an interesting era that we're currently in with AEW currently.
Yeah, I think we're pretty much in agreement on that. So it's great to know that we're on the same page. In terms of Collision, mate, there has been some definite changes in recent weeks. I don't think even so much after Punk leaving. I just think the show has been tweaked. Shivani was on the call again this week. It looks like they're sticking with a 3-man booth. I wasn't sure last week whether it was just a one-off, but it looks like Kevin Kelly and Nigel McGuinness are going to be joined by Tony Schiavone every week. As well, we haven't got the same little intro videos at the start. And again, that's 2 weeks in a row now. So it looks like they've moved on from those. What are your thoughts on those 2 points? And where do you think Collision is at in general? Because I know that you were a huge Collision fan when we were talking last, probably 6 weeks ago or so. Where do you think Collision's at in relation to where it was when it launched?
So, I don't really think it's a conspiracy theory or an assumption to say, Dave, that was very much Punk's show. Yeah. And I mean, I just don't think that show gets the green light without Phil Brooks coming back and being kind of the spearhead of it. And, a lot like Adam Copeland stepping up to the plate, Bryan Danielson stepping up to the plate isn't what I would exactly call a downgrade by any means. I mean, this guy's putting on just clinic week after week after week on AEW Collision. But with that being said, Collision had a very much old school type of beat to it, kind of the old school, like Georgia South wrestling kind of theme. And, that was a part of the charm, in my opinion, and kind of a part of the allure. And, you could tell that, there were a couple creative differences between that and Dynamite. And, the identity of both shows was definitely, there was definitely a stark difference. And when Punk left, you could, like you said, see some of these kind of small alterations. And I think it's safe to say that Bryan Danielson has filled the helm left by Phil Brooks. And, Tony Khan's even gone as far as to say if something were to happen to him tomorrow, he would want AEW, entrusted to a guy like Bryan Danielson. So obviously this is very much the Danielson show now. And I think after we talk about, what kind of transpired on Collision, that it'll be even that much more clear. So I guess the ultimate question here is, how do I feel about Bryan Danielson's vision? Yeah. I mean, this is a guy who's been through every major promotion. I mean, it's funny. Edge has actually been in a Royal Rumble each of the last 4 decades. I mean, he's a historic figure in the sport of professional wrestling, and Bryan Danielson is very much the same. A guy who defied the odds in WWE, a guy who's just who's household name even in the independent circuit. He's a lot like Adam Copeland. I thought it was interesting actually, Dave, to see him, Christian, and all of them standing in the ring together a couple of collisions ago. I thought that was kind of a cool moment. Yeah. And, it's kind of like watching a passion project every Saturday night and just watching some of these great minds just kind of try to get some of these young guys over. And, I think that they've been successful in a lot of those endeavors. So it seems to me like there has been more of an emphasis on telling long-term stories now that Danielson is kind of a part of the fray. I mean, I will say when the Andrade match was announced yesterday or on Rampage, I was just kind of like, okay, well, that's kind of interesting. I guess that's just the toy that Danielson wants to play with this week. But once you see the post-match angle and you see kind of the theme throughout the show, you're like, okay, I see what Danielson's shooting for here. He's a lot like Sting, I mean, this next year is big for him. He's got a lot of stuff to check off his bucket list. I mean, for God's sakes, he's wrestling Okada in a tag team match this Wednesday night. So I think we're very much watching, Danielson kind of swing his brass knuckles around, kind of swing his brass balls around in a sense, and very much do what he wants to do. And so far, definitely not a bad consolation prize in the post-Punk era.
Well, yeah, when we're getting matches, a dream match, as was announced on Rampage, Danielson up against Andrade or Idolo. We really, as wrestling fans, we've got nothing to complain about, have we? I mean, what a match this was, Parker.
Oh, absolutely. Last time these two tangled up was 2018. And I think I remember watching that. It was a WWE match. And at the time, I was like, man, if you could just put these two guys in a ring and just, not have the confines and constraints of what they're allowed to do in ring and WWE. And, man, these two kicked each other's ass. I mean, they really
There
did.
was
I
some
mean,
robust exchanges.
absolutely. I mean, both these guys were extremely beaten up. They're both extremely physical. We've seen Danielson just go on absolute tear as of late. I mean, you and I haven't had a chance to sit down and talk about it, but I mean, that absolute technical classic with Zack Sabre Jr. was just masterful stuff. Having John Moxley on commentary, that was an absolute treat to witness. You've seen Danielson kind of take on Kyle Fletcher. And I mean, even Kyle Fletcher's even, on Dynamite putting on clinics with Kenny Omega. So, when I think of any type of, program on weekly television, Dave, I think of like, who are the staple heads? You think of Monday Night Raw, who do you think of? Gunther. And every single guy, I mean, Gunther is just making everybody look like a superstar. Danielson's making everybody look like a superstar. Omega's making everybody look like a superstar. So, you are only as good as your star power. And are they catapulting these younger talents to new heights? And I wouldn't say Andrade El Idolo is a younger talent, but at the same time, there is still a lot left to be desired with his current AEW run. And, I still think we have seen yet the best of him in an all elite wrestling ring, but it was awesome to see these two just absolutely go at it in the opening contest. And I got to say the post match angle was awesome too, but I just love what we're getting out of Collision as of late. It took me a while to kind of get used to the new formula, but I'm definitely starting to come around.
Well, in relation to the post match, Danielson picks up the win, and he kind of out wrestles Andrade. There was a number of pinfall exchanges at the end, and it could have gone either way. I think that was the story they were telling. So I don't think Andrade was really too damaged in defeat. But the post match was Malachi Black. So the lights went out. They came back on, and he hit the Black Mass on Danielson. And it wasn't the last time that we'd see House of Black throughout the course of the night. As you say, it was very much the theme of the show that the House of Black are back at full force. Are you interested? It's a redundant question, really. Yeah.
Am I interested?
Yeah,
oh my goodness.
Yeah, not
I'm enamored. If anything, I mean, look, you and I have made it very well known how we feel about the House of Black. I've said it on the show before, Malachi was my guy unless Punk came back, and I was lucky enough in, I already forget where I was at. I want to say it was North Carolina when I was able to catch CMFTR versus House of Black live. I mean, that was like watching my action figures fight each other. I mean, it was just absolutely awesome stuff. And, it's awesome that Danielson is kind of piggybacking off of a image and a, kind of predetermined plan of Punk's Collision almost, of like, a lot of the people that were getting pushed while Phil was there are still getting pushed. It doesn't seem like a lot of plans were like permanently rearranged, or, Danielson's vision is, too skewed away from what Phil was trying to do. It seems like, he's kind of picked off where Punk's creative left off in a sense. And obviously I know Punk was not the only head of creative here, but I mean, he obviously had an influence just like Danielson has an influence. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But, like you said, Danielson out wrestled Andrade just like he outstriked Zack Sabre Jr., which I love that storytelling. It protects Andrade. Andrade lives to fight another day. Still comes out of the contest looking good. Post-match angle, the lights go out just like they did when Malachi first debuted, kicking Arn Anderson in the head. And I love that little bit of storytelling. And, of course, this, as you said, throughout the night, kind of the mission statement of AEW Collision is the House of Black is here, and the House of Black is going to dominate everybody in their way. And that was one of my biggest pet peeves about how they were presented on TV for so long, was that, they aren't this dangerous group of misfits who just absolutely loathe the idea of anyone else succeeding on their show. I mean, we had Malachi come out and say a couple times, oh, well, I'm a Collision guy. And, with that being said, we never really saw that sense of pride or them be territorial like they were last night. And for them to just come after everybody was just a really, really cool concept. And it really kind of let the mission statement be known. And I'm very excited to see them tangle up with Blackpool Combat Club. I think everybody's going to come out of this looking like fucking rock stars. So I'm definitely happy to see what the wheels turning and the gears moving, no pun intended, with the House of Black moving forward, especially since they dropped the trios titles. And, you and I were kind of worried that they were going to kind of fade into obscurity a little bit now that they don't have much to do. But it very much seems like they are here to kind of take that group to the next level and kind of come after some of the upper echelon groups in AEW trios, if you will. So I'm nothing but pumped about about House of Black's future coming out of Collision, especially once I saw Danielson himself getting kicked in the head by Malachi. So let's get a singles match between these two guys ASAP.
Do you think that's going to be Full Gear, or do you think we're going to have the gang warfare at Full Gear with the Blackpool Combat Club and the full House of Black?
Well, that's the thing. We've already done Anarchy in the Arena. We've already done Stadium Stampede this year. So it makes me wonder if we are trending in that direction of, a possible gang warfare setup. Blood and Guts is also in the rear view as well. So that's kind of off the table. I mean, don't get me wrong, they can do whatever they want. They can do a Stadium Stampede, they can do Anarchy in the Arena at Full Gear. I mean, they're booking this stuff, as Adam Copeland said, week to week, creatively, actually. So with that being said, I mean, it's interesting because, a lot of the disgruntled talent are kind of getting appeased at the moment. Ricky Starks, they finally put a title on him for the first time, in an actual sanctioned title in the tag team championship. He's got a free agent contract coming up. You got a lot of disgruntled talent who seem to be getting appeased on AEW Collision at the moment. And, you had Malachi come out on his Instagram Live recently. I would know this because I'm a fanboy. And, he basically states that, I don't know why I'm not having singles matches. I'm not injured, that's not my call. So makes you wonder if guys like Danielson see that and they're like, all right, I can take this guy to the next level and I can do it on a big 4 pay-per-view. I mean, hopefully, best case scenario, in my opinion, Dave, is they do the gang warfare leading up to Full Gear and you just let Malachi and Danielson just go at it. Because in my opinion, we still haven't seen NXT takeover levels, Tommy in Aleister Black kind of performances out of Malachi since he's been in AEW. Seems like he's been kind of relegated to being that tag team guy. But if you give him and Danielson absolutely no constraints and just a huge big 4 pay-per-view audience, I think these two guys are going to tear the house down. Kind of reminiscent of, what we saw Swerve and Hangman do. Really, I think both of them can play their roles extremely well. So here's to hoping that they do get that big singles competition that I would say is definitely a dream match at this point.
Yeah, that's my opinion as well. I'd love to see them work towards I want to see that match. As much as I appreciate AEW giving us the free matches, if you like, on television of Danielson Andrade, I think Malachi Black Danielson is a top pay-per-view marquee match. And I think with Full Gear around the corner, I think that's a match that should be announced for there rather than a Dynamite.
That could main event if Jay White and MJF is not on the card. I mean, really, that's still a match of the night contender, regardless. I mean, really, just from a technical standpoint, not to cut you off, but I mean, just a guy with the ferocious firepower and velocity of offense like Malachi, pair that with a guy with the technical prowess of Danielson, and you pace that match well. I mean, that could honestly be a match of the year contender. And I'm not just saying that to say that. I mean, that's one of the more underrated prospects, in my opinion, on a card like that's already headlined by just a huge match in general.
Yeah, and talking about prospects as well, next 2 matches really, both short matches. First, we had Sky Blue up against Hollywood Haley. She made a debut. She was featured in the OVW documentary on Netflix, so it was great to see her appearing in AEW and getting an opportunity. Sky Blue, though, very interlaced with the House of Black story as well. We've saw the makeup and the general attitude, the demeanor change over the last few weeks. Do you think that we're going to be getting Sky Blue joining the House of Black, Parker? What do you think about her progress in recent weeks?
It's interesting because if we're going to talk about Sky Blue, the immediate parallel you're going to make is Julia Hart. And, honestly, you could say she's had a complete metamorphosis, not only as a character, but just as a performer as well. Just gathering a huge string of wins and just putting together some really solid contests in recent months. One with Chris Statlander in particular, I thought she held her own and looked pretty good. There's still a couple people on the roster like your Anna Jays I just think are just way too green, but Julia Hart has really kind of found her footing in recent months, a lot like a couple other women in the division as well. So to add Sky Blue to that, who obviously is a popular female performer within the division, you add that aspect to her character, and then you add another woman to the House of Black, and this group just gets bigger. What I immediately think of is, a lot of people are going to kind of look at a guy like Powerhouse Hobbs joining the Don Callis family and just kind of roll their eyes almost and just be like, okay, and I thought it was a little fraudulent myself. They come out on Dynamite and Hobbs is talking about a 25-year-old beef he had with Jericho. Meanwhile, they've been in the promotion for years, and it's
Yeah.
this deep-rooted story. But the story that they're telling with the House of Black is very much one of kind of evil taking over and kind of changing your identity and kind of conforming to this cult-like thing. And it's a very slow burn kind of thing. And I think Sky Blue is a more than capable performer. I'd say ahead of Julia Hart, honestly. And to kind of give her something to do, add her to a program with significance as the House of Black rises to prominence within, probably the next couple months, and you kind of see her ascension as well. I don't see this as a bad thing for her, just like I don't see Powerhouse Hobbs joining the Don Callis family as a bad thing for him. It keeps these people busy, gives them something to do, and keeps less people out of catering. So I'm all for it.
Yeah, I loved the gear as well. It was obviously
Oh, the Mystery
Scooby-Doo
Machine gear.
inspired. Mystery Machine, but
Loved it.
I thought Mystery Machine was quite apt as well, given the kind of change to her character and personality of late and which direction she's going to go in. But yeah, the gear was great. And she picked up the win. She hit the code blue on Hollywood Haley. Short match, as was the next match, really, but always good to see the Guns. I'm a huge fan of Bullet Club Gold. I know you are as well. I think the Guns have really played their part so well as the tag team in the group. Really, really entertaining, really, really charismatic and proficient in the ring. They were up against the Outrunners. They picked up the win with the 310 to the Yuma. 310 to Yuma, easy for me to say. But after the match, it was more interesting. I suppose we saw the devil. We saw the MJF mask. The lights went out and that came on the screen, and Jay White kind of was reacting to it. Parker, quick thoughts on Bullet Club Gold, the Guns, and who you think is the man behind the MJF mask? Because I take it you're the same as me. You're not expecting it to be MJF.
No, it's too easy. And I look at the stature of the guy. We're here in spooky season, Halloween on the horizon, and you got the masked man. You got to figure out who he is. He's taking people out. And it's never the lowest hanging fruit. It's never the easy answer. So my brain automatically goes to a guy like Mike Bennett. And I think there has to be some type of collusion behind closed doors between Adam Cole and Jay White. I mean, there's already been teases of that, on AEW television before Adam Cole's injury and before Jay White was even signed to AEW. So there's a lot of history there. So I would not be surprised if, it's one of Roddy's, Adam, one of Roddy's boys, is kind of involved in this, and then Adam Cole can kind of play dumb, deaf, and blind and be like, I knew nothing about that. I don't know. They're gonna add more wrinkles to the storyline. I'm expecting it to be one of those stooges who's been involved in some of these, skits that's been going down. In regards to how I feel about the Guns, I had absolutely high praise for Bullet Club Gold dating back to months ago. I said that they were going to be the hottest thing in AEW very soon. And I just bravo to the creative team in AEW for just kind of shotgunning them straight to the main event scene, getting them involved with MJF, getting Jay White involved with MJF. Jay White's kind of auditioning to be world champion right now, walking around Triple B, cutting promos like he's already the world heavyweight champion, kind of pulling a Christian Cage, if you will, but kind of adding that young prowess that only a guy like Jay White can really have, that confidence. I mean, this is a guy who's in Japan, absolutely reinvented himself and came out one of the best performers in the world. And like what you and I have said, we're finally seeing it all kind of come, full circle on American television. And, I just love the fact that we're getting nearer and nearer to a Jay White world title pay-per-view main event stateside, so people can really see what this guy is capable of. And you give him the cool logo, you give him the t-shirt. MJF's kind of already alluded to that. He's like, you got the group, you got the cool logo, you got the catchphrase. You add all of that with him being a next level performer as well, and Bullet Club Gold is sitting on something pretty. And the Guns themselves are making a name for themselves, and they're not only reinventing their characters but their bodies as well. They're getting some new catchphrases over, and Juice Robinson, who's fighting MJF this upcoming week for the Dynamite Diamond Ring, this guy's just killing it with everything he's given on week to week television. I mean, he's just that unlikable jackass, just that loudmouth guy of the stable. And I just think everybody in this group of guys really plays their roles well, and a lot like all bullies and quote unquote sigmas, alpha males, they go straight to the guy at the top of the food chain and MJF, and that's a very true to life kind of dynamic. So to see two top line performers in MJF and Jay White kind of clash on television, and it's just an interesting dynamic, and it seems like kind of a new era in AEW, and it's almost kind of reminiscent of when Full Gear a couple years ago, when your biggest program heading into that show was Hangman Adam Page versus Kenny Omega. I mean, you're not carrying yourself off the back of a veteran or a well-known name in the business. You're letting two young guys telling their own new story for this new generation kind of, carry the show and carry programming. And I think so far these two have carried the weight very well.
Yeah, I mean, Juice Robinson right now is my favorite performer in AEW in wrestling, probably.
He's so good.
But I think AEW have got to been given a lot of credit for sticking with the guns, persisting with the guns, and Juice really. And they obviously had a plan in mind for this group, and they've stuck with them. There was a lot of backlash. There was a lot of criticism around the time the Guns picked up the tag titles. But I think now those decisions are really justified, because they're providing some really, really entertaining content. And I, for one, and similar to yourself, I'm interested to see. I'm disappointed if those guys aren't on the show, and I'm tuning in every week to see what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, they're just absolute menaces no matter where they are on the card, who they're talking to. They try to make everything memorable, and I like that. And, it seems like they're just having fun out there. Jay White, like I said, exuding charisma. The Guns, very much a meaningful part of it as well. Like you said, AEW kind of stayed the course with these guys. And I think what a lot of people forget, Dave, is that some of these guys are in this position for a reason. I mean, some people could look at Collision and Dynamite and Rampage the last couple weeks and be like, God, why am I seeing Kyle Fletcher wrestle so much? And then you see him take on Kenny Omega in a match of the week contender, and it's like, wow, maybe the reason I'm getting so much exposure to this guy is because he's just good.
Yeah.
So it's always awesome to see anybody make a name for themselves, and I definitely think this group has made the most of their platform.
Yeah, and talking about having fun and a lot of fun. I mean, we haven't rehearsed this. We haven't spoke about this match, so we might be on totally two different ends of the spectrum with the next match. I absolutely love this Memphis street fight. If you'd have asked me a year ago, did I want to see Jeff Jarrett competing anymore regularly, I would have said probably not. I've always been a Jarrett fan. I loved his run in WCW. I was a huge Slapnuts fan. And I think he's done stuff of note since, obviously, with TNA. And he's never really disappeared. He's always popped back up. But I really, really enjoy this little fun faction that he's got going ahead with, like, Team TNA, with Jay Lethal, with Sanjay, with Satnam, and even Karen. I think they're really entertaining. This was overbooked. This was stupid in a lot of sense. There is a lot going on. But I really, really thought it was a lot of fun. And I enjoyed it. Now, you could come in and say I hated it. So I'll pass to you, man. What did you think of this Memphis street fight? And what do you think about Jeff Jarrett in 2023?
So it's so funny because, like, you look at all like these huge signings that All Elite Wrestling's made, over the last couple of years, and you think of the Hardys, and you think about how they've underdelivered. I think Jeff Jarrett has over-delivered in a lot of ways. And it's almost nostalgic because he brings that, I would say, impact, but we're TNA again, baby. He brings kind of that absurd TNA factor to AEW programming whenever he's on there. And that group of ragtag toys, when I first saw them on, the ensemble of them, I'm like, oh my God, like what in the 2007 is this? And it's funny because he was almost like the perfect foil for a guy like Eddie Kingston in this type of match. Like, this is the match that I never thought I needed or never thought I wanted, if you will.
The same. Exactly.
And when I was watching it, I was like, wow, this is actually a lot of fun, and I'm actually kind of enjoying this. And
I was thoroughly entertained.
And even though sports entertained, right? And that's the thing. Like, sometimes wrestling can just be goofy and just be fun. Like, we're not sitting here psychoanalyzing every little aspect of the business. Sometimes we just want to see, silly, goofy things like this. And I think Jeff played the role. Jeff absolutely cracks me up, Dave, whenever he hits his finish and he just celebrates for 45 seconds without making the cover. Just stuff like that, just crack, because he does it every single match.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got Eddie dead to rights, and he's sitting there, he's celebrating before he even makes the cover, and it's just the silly things like that, and just watching Satnam Singh's big ass just get knocked off the apron, Karen getting involved, Jay Lethal dressed like he's in Van Halen, and just the absurdity of this is just really what added to kind of the charm of it. So I think, it's one of those things where, like, watching it on TV, you got your people watch movie, they're film bros. They try to, say over intellectualize everything. This is just one of those dumb, fun things about wrestling. And I'm a lot like you. I enjoyed it. And then, who doesn't love Eddie Kingston, for God's sake?
It's kind of that film takeaway that you've mentioned there. It was kind of like a B movie, which in B movies can be a hell of a lot
exactly.
of fun.
I think that's what I was trying to say, was that it was like this campy, horrible slasher film. And maybe it's because it's October and I'm watching those kind of movies in general, and I'm just enjoying the campiness of it. That's actually a really good point, Dave. Maybe that's why we both liked it. That's actually a really good point.
Yeah. Well, Jarrett picks up the win, which means that Kingston, when they would be defending the title against Jay Lethal, the Ring of Honor title, and that should be another great match. And Jay Lethal, very capable performer, and he can switch it on. He can be involved with comedy segments like this, or with comedy elements, but can have some fantastic matches as well. So I think it'd be a very different match to this one. Carry on, mate.
I said Roderick Strong, kind of in that same genre. Yeah, he's got a neck brace on, screaming at him right now. What did you say? I cut you off. My bad.
Yeah, no, I was just saying that he's capable of having a very different match of the night contender against Kingston when that title's defended. So there's a lot of range to those guys. I just loved it, and I'd be lying if I said anything different. In regards to the next match, this was another match. I thought this was going to be a very quick squash match, like two of the earlier matches, but it wasn't. I actually wrote down this won't last long, and then I wrote longer than I thought. And this was Action Andretti up against Miro. In what I say, not the match that I expected, but another good match with CJ sitting at ringside. There was some great moments in this, including Action Andretti hitting a springboard 450, where Miro kicked out on one. Parker, what is your thoughts on Miro right now? Did you enjoy this match, and were you impressed by Action Andretti's performance?
So I don't know where I want to start with this. So I guess I'll start with probably Miro and CJ Perry. I have no idea where they're going with this, but I love it for that. I like that I have really no idea where the narrative is going in regards to, because obviously, dating back to their time in WWE, they were Rusev and Lana, and, they were a very visual on-screen couple. And, it seems like in AEW, maybe Miro is playing a little hard to get. It seems like CJ may have some alternate intentions. And, obviously the Redeemer has been an interesting story arc for Miro as well. So, I mean, honestly, with the narrative, I'm definitely enticed to see where they go next. And this was nothing more than, on paper, like you said, what I would think not a very long exhibition/squash match with Action Andretti, who really hasn't picked up much traction since his big win over Chris Jericho. And I don't know how much we can say it's big, but I think the simple fact that he even got as much offense as he did on Miro kind of is a testament to, they're hoping that this is a guy they can get over. This is kind of more along the lines of a guy I wanted to join the Don Callis family. This is a guy that needs to add some layers to his character. This is a guy who, ever since that big win over Jericho, has been kind of like insert babyface who needs to get pinned here. And, I don't want Action Andretti to be in that, type of position forever. I mean, I almost kind of view him in the same lines of a guy like Darius Martin. Darius Martin is extremely agile, extremely talented, extremely good in ring, but never developed much of a character. So, I'm hoping that Action Andretti can kind of find his footing as a character as well. But I'm definitely interested with this Miro story arc. I kind of wanted to hear your thoughts on it too.
Yeah, I never expected CJ to join Action Andretti. But I didn't want Action Andretti just to be the sacrificial lamb, like you say. I wanted him to. I think he's got more potential than that, and the fact that how this match was booked kind of suggests that AEW are thinking exactly the same. He's not just a guy they want to throw out there and put in squash matches. They do want to showcase his talents. But he's relatively new to our screens, and there's a lot of time for him to develop that character. But in ring, I think he's got fantastic potential. And I always look forward to seeing him have a match. I just thought this particular match would be Miro just to assert his dominance, which we did get, and he picked up the win with the game over. But as I say, it wasn't the squash match that I was expecting.
No, definitely not. And there were moments where guys like Ricky Starks were getting beat up like this too, and Swerve really getting his first big win against Hangman Adam Page. And I definitely don't think we're there yet with Action Andretti, but I don't want to be one of those situations either where it's the landscape is so oversaturated that guys like him aren't making the most of their TV time. I mean, you did get a win over Chris Jericho, and he still really doesn't have a voice. He still really doesn't have much of a character, and that's definitely concerning. I mean, like I said, just in the last couple of weeks, I feel like I've learned a lot about Kyle Fletcher, but Action Andretti's been there since the beginning of Collision. And what have we really learned about him, really? I think that's definitely something, a little bit of a passion project Danielson and them need to kind of put their ears together on. But I'm also not, this person that thinks that everybody can win and everybody can be pushed at the same time. But, like you said, I still think it was a good showing for both parties, more than I expected from Action Andretti. And, I thought they kind of protected him even in defeat of him kind of putting up more of a fight against Miro than anticipated. And, I didn't see him aligning. I didn't see Action Andretti aligning with CJ Perry either. And I hope that they really are going in a direction that a lot of us aren't anticipating with this storyline. And or if this is just one of those slow build things up to their eventual reunion. But either way, one of the biggest, promises of Collisions is guys like Miro. We're going to get more of exposure. And I'm always happy to see Miro, aka the Redeemer, beating some dudes up on Saturday night.
And talking about guys that we want to see more of and guys that beat people up, we saw a backstage, like a recording segment, a vignette of Roosh and LFI. And I thought this was really interesting because Roosh did allude to this, saying about people saying that I'm dangerous, or people tell me to stay home because I'm dangerous. And there's obviously that match with Jack Perry a couple of months ago where there was some reports online that, that it was unprofessional from Roosh. And I don't know if you read any of that at the time. I am a huge Roosh fan, and I love how they're positioning him as this leader. And I think Collision gives him the perfect opportunity to really elevate himself to the top of the card. Are you as excited of the potential return of Roosh as I am, Parker?
Roosh thinks that wrestling is real.
Yeah.
Roosh is a scary guy.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about a dangerous fellow, okay?
Yeah.
We're talking about a guy that made me think he was sending Bryan Danielson to the Shadow Realm the last time they were in the ring together. Yeah. So Roosh is not one of your fake tough guys. Roosh is a dangerous individual, and one that is often forgotten about when we're talking about AEW's roster. You obviously think of guys defecting from AEW, like Dragon Lee, who's gone over to WWE, and of course has gotten great exposure. But a guy like Roosh, within the confines of AEW and what they allow and what they don't allow, they definitely allow more than they don't allow. And when you've got an absolute madman like that in a squared circle, I just feel sorry for the guy that's across from him. And like you said, I am very much excited for his return as well. And I think he's going to remind the world very quickly who he is.
Yeah. And on to the next part was Eddie Kingston. He was backstage. He was being seen to by a medic. And this was a definite gear change to the match that he had in terms of, the craziness, the fun, sports entertainment type match that he had up against Jeff Jarrett. He really kind of brought us back down to earth with his promo. I thought it was fantastic. He alludes to Jay Lethal's mom, and he said that she's going to be crying, not because that Kingston's destroying Jay, but because she knows that Jay deserves it. I thought that was a killer line. And I think Eddie Kingston's one of the absolute best on the microphone.
Well, it's, you go back to where, he wins the ROH title against Claudio in New York. And
yeah,
he very much has that signature New York grit, that working class mentality. And, everything he says is almost like a metaphorical Glock to the head and chrome to the dome, if you will. And, it's just that real life vigor that, he has is just almost unmatched. And I feel like that's also why he resonates so much with, just the everyday audience, just that authenticity that he has. And, he's put on just some great performances against Shibata, against Double J, as we were just referring to. And now he's taking on Single J and, making it personal. And, as usual, no one's mother is safe in AEW. My goodness. I mean, we're just coming after all the dads and the moms. And, just to see Eddie kind of go that extra mile and kind of add some stakes to what was almost a cartoonish performance, not even like 30 minutes prior.
Exactly.
I thought also shows a lot about Eddie's range. And Eddie's another guy, man, once he gets those titles off of him, which is hopefully, not too soon, that's a guy that I could easily see in the main event picture. But I think Tony Khan knows once he's in that ring staring across anybody with the AEW World title, you might just have to pull the trigger. You've already seen a lot of if Eddie loses We Riot stuff just over an ROH title and a New Japan title. So this is a guy that, is kind of a main eventer in waiting. And I never really thought I would say that as someone who was critical of Eddie at one point, but this guy has slowly turned into one of the most popular performers in the world and, kind of showing his chops here on being able to go from kind of comedy act guy to, I'm coming after, I'm going to hurt you in front of your family kind of guy. So I like you said, that range was really admirable.
And this is what we were saying earlier about this building stage that AEW are in. They've elevated a lot of guys to just below that main event picture. So it's really going to be interesting over the 6 months' time to look back and see where some of those guys are, see where Malachi is, see where Swerve is, see where Hangman is. All these guys that are kind of top tier performers, but we either have never seen them in that position at the top of the card before, or they haven't been there for a while. And I think, as you say, Eddie Kingston's definitely somebody that could be in line for a future AEW World
Eddie
title run.
is on MJF's list. Don't ever forget me saying that. When MJF first and I'm telling you, this is going to come full circle one day. When MJF won the AEW World Championship, he put a list on his social media, and Eddie Kingston was pretty much at the bottom of it. And Eddie is one of the only people left on that list that he has not faced off against yet. So don't be surprised if these two are in a squared circle for that World Heavyweight title, because I definitely think Eddie has earned that status up to this point, no matter what all of his naysayers have got to say.
No, I absolutely agree. And onto a tag match now, real quick exchange again. It wasn't really a match. Two stalwarts of Collision, two guys that we expect to see every Saturday night. FTR looking a little bit naked without those tag team titles, which is, I think Nigel McGuinness said that on commentary. They were set to face two local talents, Darian Bengston and Bad Thad Brown, not guys I'm familiar with. I think, as I say, they were probably from the Tennessee area. But before really things get underway, we had the lights go out again and the reappearance of Malachi and the House of Black. Again, for the second time in the show, interrupt. Which kind of, I suppose we'll discuss that at the closing angle of the show. But we really haven't spoken at all about FTR and their run in the last few weeks and dropping the titles to Big Bill and Ricky. Where do you think they're at the minute? Again, in a post-Punk world, Punk's obvious close associates. They've got a replacement in Adam Copeland, who is a great friend. But how do you think they will have been affected by the absence of Punk and the absence of those tag team titles?
Well, I think Nigel's call, when he's not just absolutely bashing Bryan Danielson, made a really good point how they do look kind of naked without those titles. And, for them to kind of get that huge win at Wembley over the Young Bucks, who are not only EVPs, but a lot would say equals, and kind of very much in the race for that greatest tag team of all time conversation, you didn't really expect FTR to drop those titles. No. Legal situation, everybody thought there was going to be some ramifications there. Turns out that was not the case. Ended up being, that obviously Cash was hurt, and they kind of had to, take the titles off FTR. Obviously, those guys have been on just a historic run, and their work rate's been insane. Like you said, we're seeing them on singles competition, tag team competition every Saturday night. I mean, everybody's mind may bend to a will of its own, but at the same time, the body keeps score. So these are two older performers as well. Got to keep that in mind. And I think to kind of elevate a guy like Ricky Starks and give him a title that isn't just, paying homage to an old promotion is actually a very good idea. Big Bill gets exposure as well. You and I were a little bit confused by the alignment of Big Bill and Ricky Starks, but I think it's very much giving Ricky Starks things to do, putting a title on him, nearing the end of his contract. I don't think it hurts FTR whatsoever. If anything, it elevates, Big Bill and Ricky Starks to the next level. And, obviously Big Bill and Ricky Starks kind of aligning themselves with House of Black kind of during some of those post-match beatdown angles. So they're very much cemented as the big heel tag team and tag team champions in AEW currently. I thought it was a solid match they put on against FTR. Obviously, Cash and Dax are very much in the Church of Punk, filing for trademarks for CMFTR. They also just recently filed for one for Rated FTR, I think is what it's called. I thought that was kind of an interesting little thing to pick up on. Obviously, we haven't seen them align with Edge on TV, but there's a great relationship there as well between Adam Copeland and FTR. I don't know if a lot of people know this or not, but if you can go back and watch Edge's return to WWE, chronicling up to that, they were training in pretty much storage units in a ring, and FTR pretty much helped train Edge alongside his wife, Beth Phoenix. So, very deep-rooted relationship there between FTR and one Adam Copeland. A lot of people wondering where their loyalties would lie now that Punk is out of the company. But, they're still friends with Phil, obviously, and, there's no love lost there. But it's definitely been a different look for them since his departure. I mean, those three were definitely kind of a staple of AEW television. I mean, they had merchandise and everything. So it's definitely been interesting. Definitely interesting to see FTR without the titles. I really loved that the crowd kind of gave them their flowers there for a second and, just kind of let them revel in their glory, if you will. Because, I mean, we are witnessing kind of a historic run by them. They got to wrestle the Young Bucks, beat the Young Bucks from 80,000 people. That was kind of a huge moment for them. And I guess that's why it also felt so sudden when they lost the titles. So it'd be interesting to see what kind of trajectory they're on now, see what the ceiling is for Big Bill and Ricky Starks. But yeah, the tag team title picture is definitely interesting in AEW at the moment.
Yeah. And it wasn't the last time that we'd see FTR, as I say. We saw them later on the closing angle of the show. But first, in the main event, we had the Blackpool Combat Club team of Wheeler Yuta and Claudio Castagnoli take on Big Bill and Ricky Starks. Again, I thought this was a really good match. And interesting what you said about Ricky earlier, wearing gold and giving him something to do, because I think there was a risk that he was going to get lost in the shuffle, because he was set to face Punk for the real AEW World title. So his creative changed pretty quickly. So to see Ricky in main events, a Collision with gold around his waist, is welcome by me. And I thought this was a really good match. Again, we had the House of Black appearing at the end, and Big Bill and Ricky Starks retained off the back of their interference. Ricky picking up the win with a Rochambeau on Yuta. But that wasn't the end of proceedings. We had the House of Black attack the BCC. Then we had Danielson come out. Then we had FTR return before Jon Moxley makes his triumphant return to the company after what's been a little bit of a worrying time recently. Obviously, he had the injury picked up against Ray Phoenix. He was scheduled to face Phoenix for the title again last week, and he didn't. So there was concerns. I'm not sure on the reports, but there were concerns that maybe he wasn't medically cleared. So to see Moxley at the end and help the faces gain the upper hand was welcoming for AEW fans, myself, and I know yourself were glad to see Jon back.
Oh man, just the mercilessness of House of Black can only really be equated by a faction the level of the Blackpool Combat Club.
Yeah.
And you talk about young guys getting opportunities. I really think there needs to be a conversation sooner rather than later about just the physical transformation, the in-ring transformation of a guy like Wheeler Yuta. I mean, he's gotten into the best shape of his life. I mean, he's really starting to understand everything from a ring psychology standpoint. He really plays his role well. And even if it's just, shithead young boy of the Blackpool Combat Club, I still think that he plays that role to a T. And, I think he's really benefited from it. And, to kind of see the heights that they've reached with the Blackpool Combat Club, to see them now kind of face off against the House of Black, I think they're going to give them the proper rub, and just let me know when and where that is going to happen, because I definitely want to see it. And, to see Ricky Starks and Big Bill get the main event on Collision is awesome. Like you said, putting gold on a guy like Ricky Starks is big. I mean, this is a guy who was promised a lot when Collision started. He made it very well known, Dave, that he was not happy with Punk's departure. He learned a lot from CM Punk, and he had a good relationship with CM Punk. And, for Ricky to kind of file his name, a trademark on his own name, some people call it a negotiation tactic, but I still think in Ricky's mind, AEW's got a lot to prove on whether or not this needs to be his forever home. Everybody knows, the roller coaster Cody Rhodes is over in the world of WWE and would welcome Ricky open arms. It's being reported that, they want to make a big push for him. So I think AEW is at a point right now where they've got to kind of give these guys a reason to stay and give these guys a reason to want to be here. You got Jade Cargill defecting. She was kind of one of the, homegrown AEW stars. So Ricky obviously knows that, there's some big lights over there in WWE, but, it's not like Bryan Danielson, Tony Khan, everybody aren't trying their best to make Ricky Starks feel like a very big deal. But like you said, he very much was a victim of that entire Punk fiasco. But with that being said, let's sunny side up this thing. This guy went out and had a 5-star match with Bryan Danielson, right? I mean, This is a guy who has just put on clinic after clinic after clinic and shown he's worth the investment. And some would say he kind of went off script last week against Edge and kind of, took the brass ring, if you will, and, kind of made a moment there with Edge in the ring. So this is a guy that no matter how you feel about him, vanilla midget or not, he has shown that he very much belongs with who he is in the ring with. And, while some people see WWE as the land of opportunity, it's also been shown, especially with a guy like the likes of MJF, that, when AEW gets things done and does them the right way, you can honestly make new superstars. And I think if Ricky kind of bides his time and really leans into some of these bigger opportunities he's being given, he can make a name for himself outside of WWE. Because like Kenny Omega said, you can make a name for yourself in this business, in this sport, without ever stepping into the world of sports entertainment, if you will, then, now, or forever. So with that being said, I think Ricky Starks can be a big deal in AEW, and I think he's made the most of his opportunity, no matter what kind of skewed trajectory it kind of went on there for a while post-Punk.
Yeah, absolutely. The presentation of him, the matches he's having, the shoulders he's rubbing up against, the even the pyro as part of his entrance, he really does seem like a top-tier guy that AEW think a lot of. And I think they've corrected his course, if you like. And this tag team title reign, many thought it came from nowhere, but so far so good. I think it's been brilliant, and I'm equally happy to see Ricky Stark in tag team action with Big Bill, who I think is, again, like you said earlier, doing some of the best work of his career. Or seeing Ricky up in those singles matches, and if we lead to a single match, Ricky Starks versus Adam Copeland, particularly with what happened last week, because I'm glad you mentioned it, because how much of that do you think was ad hoc and it was just done in the spur of the moment, and how much of it do you think was cleared prior? Do you think that was a heat of the moment type thing?
I don't think that Ricky Starks gets away with things like that if he's in WWE. I very much think spur of the moment, Ricky kind of felt the energy and the hype, and very much ironically did something that Dwayne would have done. And kind of came for another top level talent and made the most of his screen time. And you could almost tell by Edge's disposition, or Adam Copeland's disposition. God, it's gonna take a while for me to get used to that. He's not even used to it, as he said. You could tell by Adam Copeland's disposition that, he definitely didn't see that coming, and, he kind of jarred his words a little bit. I thought that was smooth stuff by Ricky. I really did. And every time Ricky is in the ring with kind of a top tier performer, he gives it 110%. I mean, think about Winter is Coming last year, and what I would say was not only one of the most underrated programs, one of the most underrated matches of the year between MJF and Ricky Starks. Ricky Starks gave you, in a very limited sample size, the opportunity to see that he is a main eventer, that he is a guy that can make you believe and has the charisma, and he's worth the investment. So I hope that AEW keeps pouring into this cup, because I don't think it's going to overflow anytime soon. And he has top guy energy right now, and I hope they piggyback off that momentum. I mean, he even got to touch shoulders with Punk before Punk left. So I mean, you can't blame a guy like Ricky for going to WWE, but at the same time, I think he could benefit a lot from staying in AEW more than a lot of people realize. So I like what they're doing with Ricky Starks right now. He seemed a little lost in the shuffle there for a minute, but like you said, they kind of course corrected. And now, he's sharing the ring with pretty much icons in the business. So I think that's doing nothing but wonders for Ricky Stark's stock, if you will.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And Parker, it's been great catching up. I'm glad that you're as enthusiastic about the future of AEW as I am, and that the building they're doing is going to have some real great payoffs in the short term and the long term. But that's everything for today, everyone. Thanks for checking out our review of Collision. Buckle down and stay safe.